Hello, and welcome to the Daystrom Institute. My name is Matt, and this is my debut video here on YouTube, so I'll start by explaining what this channel is about and the kind of videos you can expect to see here. Since a very young age, I have enjoyed science fiction media of all kinds, from television and movies to games and books. I'll be exploring both well-known and lesser-known franchises, not just sci-fi but fantasy and other genres. However, as this is a new channel, this is not set in stone, and therefore there's no reason why I might not explore other subjects and topics, so if there's anything you would like me to cover, drop a comment below. As you may have guessed from the title, this video is about faster than light, or FTL, propulsion in sci-fi, and how space travel is portrayed in different franchises, from Star Trek's warp drive to more obscure examples like Farscape's Starburst. First up is Star Trek with the warp drive. In the Star Trek universe, warp drive, at least for mankind, was created by a man named Zephram Cochrane in the year 2063. This prompted the Vulcans to initiate first contact, bringing an era of peace and stability to Earth and humanity, leading to the creation of Starfleet and eventually the United Federation of Planets. Which is ironic because peace and stability were the last things on Mr. Cochrane's mind. His intention was instead to make a profit from the breakthrough, so he could retire from his otherwise miserable post-World War III life, and live on a tropical island amongst beautiful naked women, and no, I am not joking. Warp is achieved by colliding matter with antimatter, specifically deuterium and antideuterium, through an array of electromagnetically charged dilithium crystals, creating warp plasma as they annihilate each other. This is all done in what's known as a warp core. It's interesting to note that each of the aforementioned materials are not science fiction, but do actually exist in real life. Deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen, and also makes up part of heavy water, which has many applications such as its use in nuclear reactors. Antideuterium, naturally, is its antimatter counterpart. Dilithium is a, quoting from Wikipedia, strongly electrophilic diatomic molecule comprising two lithium atoms covalently bonded together, which is just a fancy way to say a pair of lithium atoms stuck together that love electrons. Not only are these materials real, but they may one day power actual real-life methods of propulsion. One Dr. Jason Cassibry of the University of Alabama in Huntsville, or the UAH for short, is head of a team of researchers building a fusion drive utilising very similar concepts to the fictional warp core of Star Trek. Being nuclear fusion, there is no antimatter involved, but in their setup, deuterium is collided with lithium-6. Just like dilithium, this is an isotope of lithium, creating, you guessed it, plasma. Obviously, this wouldn't be called warp plasma, but the similarities are interesting. I couldn't find a link to any papers published by Cassibry or his team, but I'll leave a link to the relevant article on the UAH's website in the description. Anyway, back to Star Trek. I've told you how the warp core is powered, but how is it used as a means of propulsion? The warp plasma, once created, gets channeled by plasma conduits, that's these things, through the EPS or electroplasma system, that's this thing, which also provides power to the rest of the vessel, until it's eventually injected by the plasma injectors, that's these things, into several warp coils, that's these things, which are located in the nacelles, that's these things. The nacelles, or rather the warp coils they house, create a warp field, otherwise known as a subspace field. This creates a displacement in subspace, which in turn distorts the space around the vessel, contracting at the bow, the front of the vessel, and expanding at the stern, the rear. The vessel then simply rides the waves, and so faster than light propulsion is achieved. If you're concerned for the laws of physics, you needn't be, as the warp drive avoids the normal limitations imposed by the special theory of relativity, because the vessel, according to itself, remains stationary. It's the fabric of space surrounding the vessel that gets distorted, and this can happen at superluminal speeds, so Mr. Einstein doesn't need to be offended. In fact, in the real world, the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light as it is, so the concept isn't entirely outlandish. But what exactly is subspace, I hear you ask? Well, that's unfortunately never described. It's used as a solution to the faster than light problem and for other various plot devices in Star Trek, but there's never a concrete explanation of what it is. Now, let's talk velocity. The speed of warp drives is measured in warp factors on a scale from 1 to 10. That is, at least if we use the recalibrated warp scale used from the next generation onwards. On this scale, 1 is equal to the speed of light and 10 implies infinite velocity, referred to as transwarp. At transwarp, you would conceivably occupy every single point in space simultaneously. This actually happens a few times in Star Trek, with interesting consequences. But in order for me to sensibly compare the maximum speeds between different franchises, I'm going to deliberately ignore warp factors that are considered dangerous, and other more exotic forms of travel, such as transwarp, or the spore drive showcased in Star Trek Discovery. I'm also going to ignore races that are not part of the Federation, as Star Trek is usually focused on Starfleet vessels, so that's where most concrete information is available. I'm excluding J.J. Abrams' alternate timeline too, not because I dislike it, I don't, but as far as I could tell they use the old pre-the next generation warp scale, making it hard to compare. So to find a maximum speed, we should look at the fastest ship that Starfleet has to offer, and naturally that means the newest. That would be the Sovereign class Enterprise E featured in Star Trek Nemesis. However, the Enterprise E never exceeds warp factor 8 in that movie, and while it's ostensibly capable of much higher speeds, they're not documented. That leaves us with the next latest ships in the Star Trek chronology. The Intrepid class vessels, such as the Bellerophon, seen briefly in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and the much more noteworthy Voyager, the setting of Star Trek Voyager. For this we do have concrete data. Voyager, like other vessels, is capable of pushing speeds past its specifications in emergency situations, but these are dangerous and unpredictable. Therefore, the maximum sustainable warp factor of Voyager, and other Intrepid class ships for that matter, is 9.975, a speed which it can sustain for up to 12 hours. So this sounds like a fair maximum to use. According to the official Star Trek Voyager technical manual, link in the description, warp 9.975 is equal to 3053 times the speed of light, or in other terms, 2.04 trillion miles per hour, or 3.28 trillion kilometers per hour. At that speed, you can cross the whole solar system in less than 13 seconds. Next up is Star Wars. In the Star Wars franchise, FTL travel is achieved via hyperspace, which is an alternate dimension of space. Via hyperspace lanes that any old smuggler, rebel, or indeed loyal subject of the Empire may use at a whim, if he or she has access to a starship with a hyperdrive. George Lucas was deliberately vague on the details of this and other matters, preferring to concentrate on plot. However, the canon of the Star Wars universe is large in its lore and has been expanded upon multiple times, with technical manuals, novelizations, and many other forms of media. Wikipedia, the Star Wars Wikia, references the Star Wars The Force Awakens Incredible Cross-Sections book in its description of the hyperdrive, which I will repeat to you now. Hyperdrives manipulated hypermatter particles in order to thrust a starship into hyperspace by taking advantage of the wrinkles in the fabric of real space, while still preserving the ship's mass energy profile. This shortened journeying distance significantly, allowing the vessel to jump from a specific point to another without having to travel directly between them, therefore reducing journey time by an extraordinarily large margin. This was by no means a simple feat, as Han is happy to remind Luke in A New Hope.
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and then end your trip real quick, wouldn't we?
Nor is it necessarily safe, as Vice Admiral Holdo demonstrated spectacularly in The Last Jedi, when she collided the Radis, the vessel she was commanding, with the First Order's dreadnought the Supremacy, instantly vaporizing the former and obliterating the latter. As for her maximum speed, this one took me a great deal more research than Star Trek's warp drive, as there is no technical manual or anything else for that matter that clearly states how fast a hyperdrive exactly is. If you believe Han Solo, the Millennium Falcon can do
0.5 past light speed.
You may think that this is simply 1.5 times the speed of light, but that cannot account for how quickly the Falcon got from Tatooine to Alderaan, a distance of thousands upon thousands of light years. It is believed that George Lucas, like many writers of his time, severely overestimated just how fast the speed of light is, and so thought it was more than quick enough to traverse a great section of a galaxy far, far away in a relatively short amount of time. Then again, it may be unfair to judge Lucas on the words of a less than reputable smuggler, the very same Han Solo who declared the Falcon
that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
a non sequitur, considering parsecs is a measure of distance, not time. So what does that leave us with? An answer to a question on the Sci-Fi and Fantasy Stack Exchange website attempting, like I, to compare the speed of the hyperdrive with Star Trek's warp drive provides some very interesting information that we can use as a starting point. It is in fact this question and answer which inspired me to create this video, link in the description. However, while the efforts of user Valorum are well researched and greatly appreciated, when trying to confirm the figures so that I would be comfortable using them in my video, I arrived at my own as they differ by a significant margin. This may be due to Valorum's factoring in of the length of a year in the Star Wars universe, but it's more likely because of the different figures we arrived at for the distance between Tatooine and Alderaan. I believe Valorum got this information by measuring the distance between these 2 points on a version of the Star Wars galaxy map that appeared in the official Star Wars The Essential Atlas, and comparing it with a vague estimate of the galaxy size present on Wikipedia of over 100,000 light-years. Rather than relying on these two resources, I used the excellent digital version of the map at swgalaxymap.com, link in the description, which has a grid with a conveniently stated scale of 1,500 parsecs. I chose this map instead because while it too is based on the one found in the Essential Atlas, Henry Bernberg, the site's creator, improved upon this already impressive version with further research and importantly utilised a Cartesian grid, which is apparently more accurate than the isometric one found in the other in regards to scale, which is my chief concern right now. Using this method, I arrived at a distance of 12,604 parsecs, or 41,108.75 light-years, compared to Valorum's figure of 70,000 light-years. Like Valorum, I used the vague figure of a few hours that appeared in the novelisation of A New Hope, The Princess, the Scoundrel and the Farm Boy, based upon the quote, "Oh, this is pointless, what can I really learn on this ship in a few hours?" But I was not entirely satisfied with this ambiguous few figure, so I looked elsewhere to corroborate. In my search, I found the Astrogation Gazetteer, a chart used in the Star Wars The Role-Playing Game, link in the description, which defines the journey time between our two concerned planets as 7 hours for a Class 1 hyperdrive. This is where Solo's quote of 0.5 past light speed comes back into play, as this has been interpreted to mean a Class 0.5 hyperdrive, and this classification system is used many times throughout the expanded universe since. It's doubtful that Lucas intended Solo to mean this originally, but if the expanded universe uses it, then I shall too. Using this system, the class of a hyperdrive can be used as a multiplier when referring to the Astrogation Gazetteer, therefore making the trip 7 hours multiplied by 0.5, or 3.5 hours. This correlates well with Luke's a few hours, so we'll use it. Finally, we arrive at some hard data. 41,108.75 light-years in 3.5 hours is equal to 103 million times the speed of light. But that's the Millennium Falcon's modified Class 0.5 hyperdrive. For the sake of fairness, like we did with Star Trek, we can't be using the engine of a non-standard YT-1300 jury-rigged by some disreputable smuggler as our baseline. So let's bring that speed down to a standard Class 1 hyperdrive utilised by most Empire starships. Class 1 is twice as slow as Class 0.5, so we halve the speed. That brings us to 51,500,000 times the speed of light, roughly 17,000 times the speed of Star Trek's Voyager. That's a whopping 35 quadrillion miles per hour, or 56 quadrillion kilometers per hour. Or to put it another way, you could cross the solar system in 9.3 microseconds. That's 0.00001 seconds. We've had Star Trek and Star Wars, what about Stargate? For the most part, travel in Stargate is done through the devices of the same name, the Stargates. These are effectively wormholes between two distant points. However, this video is about exploring FTL propulsion systems, and while no doubt extremely interesting, Stargates are merely shortcuts between two static locations and not a form of propulsion. Later on in the series, however, the Tauri, or humanity to you and me, are able to lend some technology from the Asgards, a highly advanced alien race, and incorporate it into their own Earthborn vessels. These Daedalus class ships were operated chiefly by the United States Air Force, but the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China were also given one each. This Asgard technology, like Star Wars, was called the hyperdrive. To achieve superluminal speeds, an Asgard hyperdrive allows a vessel to enter hyperspace via a subspace window, allowing travel of vast distances without experiencing the effects of relativity, and therefore avoiding the speed of light limit. Dr. Daniel Jackson explains it better.
Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Jackson. Now, you've heard the term hyperspace for years in sci-fi movies and television shows, but what does it really mean? Well, basically, we live our lives in 3 dimensions plus time. That's another DVD. Hyperspace, also called subspace, is another dimension in which certain laws of physics, like the speed of light or the effects of relativity, don't apply. Now, by entering hyperspace, a ship can travel vast distances at speeds many times the speed of light and return to normal space once it reaches its destination. The actual math of how it all works is still highly classified, and I'm not completely sure I understand it myself. But it's how most advanced races get around the galaxy when they're not using a Stargate.
The maximum speed of this technology depends on a great number of factors. Different races travelled hyperspace at greatly different speeds, with the Ancients and the Asgard's hyperdrives apparently being the fastest. The biggest factor, however, was the power source. It has been shown that the speed of a hyperdrive is directly proportional to the power source used. A Daedalus-class warship outfitted with a zero-point module, or ZPM, as its power source was capable of travelling between the Milky Way galaxy and the Pegasus galaxy, a distance of 3 million light-years in a mere 4 days. That equates to almost 274 million times the speed of light, 90,000 times the speed of Voyager, and more than twice as fast as the Millennium Falcon. Take that, Star Wars. In other words, that's 184 quadrillion miles per hour or 296 quadrillion kilometers per hour. I'm not even going to attempt to work out how quick you can cross the solar system at that speed, but needless to say, it will be a negligible amount of time. Moving on, at superluminal speeds, from television and film to video games, we have Mass Effect. All the modern technology in the Mass Effect series revolve around what's known as the Mass Effect field, an effect observed when subjecting element 0, or ESO, to an electrical current. ESO is an exotic material produced when matter is affected by the energy of a supernova. Introducing a positive current increases the mass of the surrounding spacetime, while a negative current decreases it. Using this effect, it is possible to decrease the mass of a starship so much that it has a negative mass, allowing it to be accelerated far past the speed of light through conventional thrusters. This doesn't violate relativity and therefore avoids relativistic effects such as time dilation and bending spacetime. That's because, at negative mass, Einstein's equations allow you to do things that would otherwise be impossible. This is the crux that all the outlandish technology in Mass Effect is based on, and also gives rise to the franchise's name. This method of propulsion, while elegant and one of my favourite concepts covered so far, is not without its problems. Sustained use of an ESO-based FTL drive causes the engine to accumulate massive amounts of static electrical charge that have to be periodically discharged by docking with a space station or landing on a planet and earthing the vessel. If this is not performed, the charge will eventually fry the ship's systems and the heat will kill everyone on board. Not as glamorous a death as dying in battle with the Reapers. Speaking of the Reapers, this is where we get the only concrete data of FTL speeds in the games. I'll quote now from the codex in Mass Effect 3, specifically the secondary codex, which unfortunately is not voiced like the primary one is. The Reapers' thrusters and FTL drives appear to propel them at more than twice the speed of Citadel ships. Estimates of their location in dark space suggest they can travel nearly 30 light-years in a 24-hour period. This works out at 10,957 times the speed of light, making Citadel ships half that speed, at 5,479 times the speed of light. But this is a very rough estimate, as we only have that one codex entry to go on. This is almost twice as fast as Voyager, which by now seems comparatively slow against all these other franchises. 5,479 times the speed of light is equal to 3.6 trillion miles per hour, or 5.91 trillion kilometers per hour, across the solar system in approximately 7 seconds. Now for some honourable mentions, included because, like the others mentioned in this video, I love these franchises, but they have unfortunately very little information to go on. In the reimagined series of Battlestar Galactica, faster than light travel is achieved through the folding of space. This eponymous ship was capable of jumping up to 30 light years in this manner. However, this is just an upper limit and is never actually achieved in the series. What's interesting is that Galactica's propulsion is not limited by speed, being completely instantaneous, but by distance alone. This, however, doesn't mean that the ship is boundless and capable of multiple successive jumps to get to anywhere you want in the universe, as each jump puts a massive strain on the structural integrity of the vessel, and by the end of the series, spoiler alert, the crew of the Galactica enlist the help of their Cylon friends to repair the cumulative damage done to the ship. This limitation is only fully realised so late because the FTL systems were not intended for the epic journey that Galactica travels, instead intended originally to be a means of jumping between the 12 colonies, and not much further than that. Last but by no means least, Farscape. The transport vessel Moya is what's known as a Leviathan, an organic species of vessels, and other than the elusive wormhole technology that stranded John Crichton in the first place, the only example of faster than light travel in the series. This garners the interest of the peacekeepers who wish to utilise this means of propulsion in their own vessels, without success. This technology is called Starburst, and no, I'm not on about those delicious sweets you can get at your local shop. Starburst is perhaps the strangest of all FTL methods mentioned in this video, and works by entering one-dimensional spacetime, allowing Leviathans to traverse distances exponentially, with distance travelled being a function of time spent in said dimension, as opposed to linearly in normal spacetime. It is, however, extremely limited. Starburst, due to being an organic trait of Leviathans, is mostly a random and unpredictable endeavour. One may choose the entry vector, but where the ship leaves Starburst is usually unknown. Roughly speaking, one can choose a direction to go, but how far down that path they travel is up to chance. Conversely, this also works to Leviathan's advantage, as once Starburst is initiated, it's impossible for pursuing vessels to predict where they will end up, so this ability can be used defensively, which is fortunate as Moya has no weapons to speak of. Well, that about wraps it up for this video. In conclusion, while I spent some significant effort comparing the different examples of faster than light travel in these franchises, the speed of this colourful selection of starships is mostly irrelevant. They all in fact travel at the same velocity, and that's the speed of plot. They travel as fast as they need to for the story to be not just sensible but interesting. I hope you found this an interesting subject. Let me know in the comment section what your favourite example of FTL propulsion in sci-fi is, and if I missed your favourite franchise, let me know. I might do a video on it in the future. If you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it and would like to see more, let me know by giving it a like and subscribing to this channel. I've been Matt, this has been the Daystrom Institute, and in the words of many a Vulcan, live long and prosper.